Make love to me, Duckman.
Wow! It's never been that good!
Duckman, I'm ready. Take me.
Good day and good night. Welcome back to the High and Low Retrospective, the place where we rewind the reels and revisit the shows that dared to be smarter than the moment they were released into. Today, we're talking about a cartoon that didn't just push boundaries, it ignored them completely. Duckman wasn't adult animation before adult animation was cool. It was offensive. It was loud. It was messy, bitter, sometimes brilliant, often exhausting. It asked one simple question. What if the world was really falling apart and the only thing you had left was the energy to complain about it? No one complained better than Jason Alexander. This one's about Duckman, the animated burnout with a monologue problem, and why it still hits harder than it probably should. It's 1994. Network television is thriving. Friends is redefining the sitcom. ER is prestige before we called it prestige. The X-Files is teaching audiences how to obsess. The Simpsons has already proven that animation can be smart, subversive, and wildly popular. And then, on USA Network, a channel not exactly known for cultural risk, something slips through the cracks. Duckman. Private Dick Family Man.
Duckman quacks up the critics.
Ooh, I'm shaking.
It's wild, witty, original, and very, very strange.
So what?
Duckman is kind of a cross between Maxwell Smart and Ralph Cramden.
You have a large wad of broccoli stuck between your teeth.
It's weird, going on bizarre.
Is it me, or does your hair have more body?
USA Network has what looks to be a hit on its hands.
Good news, someone cares.
Duckman breaks from the flock. Saturday nights at 10:30 on USA.
Created by cartoonist Everett Peck and adapted for television by Klasky Csupo, Duckman felt like it wandered in from a completely different universe.
I pretty much started working in illustration. Actually, my final year there at Long Beach, I started doing some illustration in magazines, and by the time I got out of school, I was pretty much making a living as an illustrator.
To understand that visual friction, you have to look at creator Everett Peck. He didn't come from the world of Saturday morning cartoons. He was an illustrator whose rough-hewn style appeared in the New Yorker and Playboy. By bringing his boiling animation style to the screen, Klasky Csupo ensured the show felt like a living anxiety attack, a piece of subversive underground art masquerading as a network sitcom. No warm colors, no family-friendly satire, no sense that anyone was supposed to like the main character, just a duck with a dead wife, 3 kids, talking pig for a partner, and an endless list of grievances about modern life. This wasn't a family cartoon with adult jokes. It was a cartoon for adults who were already tired. At its center was Eric T. Duckman, a private investigator in LA who hated nearly everything, including himself. He was selfish, petty, loud, morally flexible, and somehow painfully recognizable.
I'm Duckman.
Tonight's guest, that incomparable crime-fighting hero, Duckman!
He wasn't just a loudmouth detective, he was the ultimate exhausted Gen Xer. While The Simpsons satirized the American family, Duckman was for the adults who were already tired of the 90s forced optimism. He was the voice of the burnout who refused to pretend the world wasn't falling apart, making him the spiritual ancestor to characters like BoJack Horseman. Duckman's partner, corn-fed pig, was the opposite. Calm, polite, Midwestern, and unfazed by the chaos. His sister-in-law, Bernice, ran the household like a drill sergeant with a Pilates membership, and his kids, Ajax and conjoined geniuses Charles and Mambo, were already miles ahead of him emotionally and intellectually. Every episode took aim at something bigger than Duckman himself. Media obsession, consumer culture, masculinity, therapy culture, politics, even TV itself. One minute it's crude slapstick, the next, a surprisingly raw monologue about grief or alienation. That tonal whiplash wasn't a flaw, it was the show.
Coming up next, Seinfeld.
Hey, George. And you must look exactly like Jerry. Just because they look alike, that doesn't mean you're secretly in love with Jerry.
George.
Your hair.
So why don't you get undressed, George?
George is in real trouble!
By the time Duckman premiered, Jason Alexander was already George Costanza, one of the most iconic neurotics in television history. George was insecurity wrapped in social rules. Duckman was insecurity with the safety rails removed. Jason Alexander didn't just voice Duckman, he detonated him. Where George bounced off the rhythms of Seinfeld's New York, Duckman ranted into the void of a world that wasn't listening anymore. It's hard not to think of the Critic here. Jay Sherman and Duckman feel like spiritual cousins, both articulate, self-aware, and painfully conscious of their own irrelevance. But where the Critic skewered Hollywood with wit, Duckman turned his anger outward, toward politics, family, capitalism, and the sheer exhaustion of being alive in the modern world. One was about taste, the other was about rot.
Here.
We're meeting a friend of ours for lunch, works here in the building.
Yeah, Art Vandelay. I tell you what, let me go and we'll forget the whole thing, okay, Irma?
Tonight, I'm not Irma. Tonight, call me Vandelay.
Like any great political figure, I'll buy your love. As a reward to all who support my administration, I will give each of you 10 centavos. Of course, to finance such a generous gift, I have to raise your taxes by 11 centavos.
Visually, Duckman looked like nothing else on TV. The animation was jagged, frenetic, bordering on grotesque, faces stretched, backgrounds melted, and the world felt unstable. And that was the point. Gabor Csupo's animation house, Klasky Csupo, embraced chaos as aesthetic. Just like Real Monsters or Rugrats, the art didn't chase beauty, it chased feeling. But Duckman wasn't made for Nickelodeon. It was adult territory, edgier, meaner, late night. The character was originally created by Everett Peck as a graphic novel for Dark Horse Comics in 1990, but it wasn't long before Klasky Csupo saw potential in the neurotic, ranting private eye. Peck himself stayed on as an executive consultant during the show's run. The design choices were deliberate. Duckman was animated with a deliberately boiling line, wobbly outlines that shimmered constantly, giving the show a kinetic, unsettled feel. It mirrored Duckman's psyche, anxious, bitter, unmoored. Underneath the visual anarchy was sharp, disciplined writing led by Ron Osborne and Jeff Reno, veterans of Sledgehammer, who brought a strong sense of parody and structural comedy to the chaos. The broader Duckman writers' room drew from the same late 80s and early 90s television comedy ecosystem that fed shows like In Living Color and later the adult animation boom that followed. While Duckman didn't launch a generation of stars overnight, it sat firmly in the transitional space between network satire and the darker, more introspective animation that would emerge years later. At its best, Duckman blended screwball noir with scathing social commentary. One minute you were wading through a swamp of toilet humor, and the next you were dropped into a monologue about systemic rot.
See, these kids have had all the formal education they need. Besides, where they're going to use all these useless facts? It's time to start learning from the school of life.
Duckman ran for 4 seasons on USA Network from 1994 to 1997. It was never a ratings juggernaut. It was too strange for mainstream success and too early for the ecosystem that would eventually support it. It earned critical praise, 3 Emmy nominations for Outstanding Animated Program, and a devoted cult audience, but it didn't fit neatly anywhere. By the time Adult Swim arrived and normalized abrasive, intelligent adult animation, Duckman was already gone. Not forgotten, just misplaced. In hindsight, it feels less like a failure and more like a prototype that arrived before the market knew what to do with it. I guess the question is this: why revisit Duckman now? Well, because so much of modern animation, BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, it carries its DNA. Shows where anger isn't the punchline, where dysfunction is the thesis, where laughter and discomfort coexist. Duckman understood something early, that cynicism could be funny, but only if it came from somewhere honest. Beneath the yelling, the filth, the nihilism, Duckman was still a widower, still a father, still afraid of being alone. That vulnerability is what keeps the show alive.
Duckman, you're so alive. I've never met anyone like you.
So that's a High and Low Retrospective on Duckman, a series that dared to scream while everyone else was whispering. It didn't last long, but it left a mark. Before Adult Swim, before BoJack, before nihilism and merch, there was a duck with a bad attitude and a worse track record. Thanks for watching this one. I appreciate you. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing. Remember to click that bell for more deep dives into the shows, the movies, the music, and the moments that dared to be different and paid the price for it. Until next time, stay critical, stay nostalgic, and remember,
This isn't about fans or adulation or blind praise. It's about family.